I'm Dale McInnis. I'm president at Richmond Community College, and we're happy to share with the North Carolina Community College Trustees Association some of our lessons we've learned on how to strengthen colleges through strategic academic partnerships. And two of our partners are here with us today.
So I'm Mark Sorrells. I'm the president of Fayetteville Technical Community College.
And Mandi Lee at Bladen Community College, representing the small rural community colleges in this group.
So we'd love to talk to our trustees and all of our partners across our system about the journey we've been on to build partnerships and strengthen our institutions by working together and breaking down barriers so that our students can take advantage of our own strengths and we can mitigate our weaknesses. So join us as we begin this conversation and explore what we've been doing together these last few months. Little background about our colleges and our systems. Our 58 colleges are a huge asset to the state. Mm-hmm. We range in size from 543, our smallest, to over 21,000 students. And each one of us has built programs to match up to our local communities and their labor and workforce needs. But they're changing. And as they change, we're going to have to find new ways to adapt and overcome. And today we hope to share some of the strategies we've used that we think can be replicated in other colleges by both boards and administrations. And we are also, I think, reflecting, Dr. Lee, the regional collaboration that we're seeing proposed by the leadership of our General Assembly as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's so important that as community colleges that we know our strengths and our weaknesses, and I think as presidents we certainly understand what those are. And the encouragement that we're getting from our local employers that may be in our service areas, but also the ones that go beyond our service areas. So as our employers are growing, our industries are growing, as new industries are coming to our state, we've got to be sure that we are all working together. So I'm proud to be here, and Mark, thank you for opening your studio up to us so that we could be here today and to share some of the things that we are doing, as well as give some contextual understanding of some challenges that we've had and some ideas we have to overcome some of those challenges. And as Dr. McInnis said, we do have some encouragement from our elected officials to do a little bit more collaboration. And that's certainly something that's in the forefront of our minds as we move forward. So we do have limited resources, and I think we are all charged with being very fiscally responsible with our resources, and to be sure that we are being as creative and innovative and nimble as we can be to meet all of the needs that our communities are presenting to us. And I'm excited about moving forward with our conversation today and addressing this challenge.
I agree with you, Mandi, and I think the other thing that's important, we all have strengths and different capabilities, but the economic development game is changing dramatically. And used to be 10 years ago, a large project may be $100 million, 500 jobs. Today, we're seeing a significant number of those projects that are reaching above 1,000 jobs and reaching to $500 million to $1 billion of CapEx investment. And that really even strains the larger colleges. So we've got to do a better job of thinking and acting regionally so that we can meet those needs of those emerging economic development projects in our state and be able to satisfy the employment need of those new employers.
So we want to share the stories that have really organically developed over the last 3 months as our relationships, which have been long-standing and deep, have blossomed into partnerships that our students and communities are now able to take advantage of. So really focused on a couple of key decision issues that we all had to face. How to make the best use of our resources.
Right.
How to avoid duplication when it didn't make sense, and how to expand options so they're relevant for our communities. Dr. Lee, you want to talk a little bit about what we've seen as you've taken your approach at Bladen County to help build and strengthen it, and how it fits into this scheme.
Absolutely, thank you. And Dr. McInnis is exactly right. I have had some needs in my county that I did not have the capacity to meet. One of those is truck driving. We have a lot of transportation needs to get products, particularly agricultural products, from point A to point Z, and a lot of demand to have truck drivers. I did not have the resources physically to do a truck driving program, nor did I have the resources from a financial perspective. And I was very excited when a grant became available that Dr. Sorrells reached out to me and was interested in partnering together. And I think we did a very innovative partnership, and my community is over the moon with the opportunities that are going to come out of this partnership as we work together.
Dr. Sorrells, you've used the term entrepreneurial to describe how we've tackled this. You want to put some context into what you mean when you take a small, medium, and a large college working together. Most folks don't think of us as being entrepreneurs. Right. How have we been entrepreneurial?
Good
well,
question.
I think first and foremost, we've built the relationships among the leadership, and we're working to spread that within our institutions to the second level supervisors and our instructors. The other thing I think that we've been willing to do is sit down and have a dialogue about what are our core capabilities, the environmental scan of the needs in our community, what our core assets are, and how we might be able to use those and partner with each other to address larger needs as well as smaller needs. Because in some situations, as we saw in Richmond County, you had a need for an employment base that was relatively small, probably couldn't sustain a new program, and we by stance had that program and had extra capacity in that program where we could place some additional people. So it's thinking outside the box and thinking outside the normal county boundary that we have normally thought about in the community college system as our service area,
right.
And how we could kind of bend and flex and work together to take the limited resources that we have and make better utilization of those to meet both the big needs and the smaller needs of our employers and make it sustainable right. going forward.
Service areas. Now that's an interesting term, isn't it? And a lot of trustees, a lot of folks that aren't in our business might be questioning, what is a service area? Well, it's actually defined in statute. So each of the 58 colleges has defined, either by county or township, the area they're designated to serve. And our 3 colleges are no different. So Mandi, Bladen.
One county, but a large county.
Right, geographically large with a smaller population. Richmond serves Richmond and Scotland counties, a little larger population. And then Fayetteville, an urban setting, serving Cumberland County. What do we have in common? We're all in the Sandhills Prosperity Zone. We're all neighbors, whether it's contiguous or not. We all serve the same region, and we fit into the same larger metropolitan area.
Right.
So the other thing I think we have in common is our experience. Dr. Sorrells, while he's the newest president in the group, has been in the community college system and been working with colleges and familiar with them for years. Dr. Lee, you've been president for how long?
At Bladen for about 4.5 years.
4.5 years. I've been president since 2010. So I think it's our experience and relationships. But Dr. Sorrells, before you came to Fayetteville Tech, you'd been working with community colleges for how many years?
Well, I actually started in the classroom about 38 years ago.
Right.
And from there, after about 7 or 8 years in the classroom, I moved into a nonprofit organization that worked with a lot of the community colleges through your small business centers, but then was fortunate to gain employment at the Golden Leaf Foundation, which really opened a lot of doors of opportunity for me because I got to meet my friends. Most of the presidents I know very closely, have great relationships with, and have built a working level of trust that I think is very, very important as we go forward. I think the other thing that's similar in our Sand Hills region is Cumberland County is home to the largest military base in the probably, I know the United States, probably the world. And our folks don't live just in Cumberland County. They live in Hope,
Right.
They live in Richmond, they live in Robinson, they live in Bladen counties. That kind of kindred nature of military spirit is something that we like to draw on because those individuals that are transitioning out, they like to stay in and around and close to their military roots.
So even though we have service areas, they're porous. The borders are not fixed, and our students, we know, are going to move back and forth, and our employees move back and forth, and we share a lot of the same people.
Absolutely.
So for trustees that are listening to this and asking, how can we learn more, how can we take advantage of it, what was the secret? It goes back to relationships. So we've known each other for well over 10 years.
Long time.
Long time. We've known each other a long time.
Absolutely.
Y'all have known each other a long time. So those long-standing relationships and the trust that comes from it is really the starting point for building any kind of partnership. We want to give you a little insight as you're listening and talking to your presidents, administrations of what are the tools we use to build these partnerships. Now at the state level, we currently have 3 designations of instructional service agreements. That's our big formal way of working together and sharing students. And we want to make sure you know what those are so we can share programs, we can share courses, and we can have approval through these documents for that truck driver program that Dr. Sorrells has here at Fayetteville Tech to come to Bladen Community College
Absolutely.
and share their assets and resources with the people of Bladen County. Now normally, Dr. Lee, that wouldn't happen unless y'all had that agreement worked out.
Absolutely. So you're exactly right. We have the ISAs. We've had them in as an option for probably since the community
Right.
colleges started.
Right.
Which is something I think we may discuss in a few minutes because they can be cumbersome. But if you are starting from a place of trust and starting from a place where you have a wonderful goal in mind, they are great resources. There are 3 options. One option is really just given permission for a college to come and offer a class on campus. I know that at our school we have used that sometimes when we have an expert in a particular field of study that we do not have access to. We'll reach out to a neighboring school and see if they can help us teach that course. And so that's the most basic agreement that you can have and the easiest one to put into place. The next one is when you have a course, and the course is going to be an opportunity for maybe even sharing resources as well as the FTE counts. So it takes a little bit more time to pull that agreement together, and it's one of the examples that we're going to share later that Dale and I did with the 911 program. And then you have an actual program where you're sharing, and when we worked on that one, I think historically at Bladen, those are some programs like the PTA program we
Right.
have with you at FTCC. We've also done hospitality management and accounting. It takes a little bit longer to work out the details when you're sharing programs. And I think as we look into the future, that might be the first area where we can really make a difference and make this an easier process moving forward.
So let's talk about what we're doing. And Dr. Sorrells, let's talk with you about, and we've already referenced the great partnership you have with Bladen. Let's build into that a little bit and talk about the CDL and the other programs that y'all identified could benefit both your institutions?
So Dr. Lee and I have had an agreement predating me with Dr. Keene for the physical therapy assistant program, the accounting degree program, as well as hospitality management.
So you're having slots in your program that their students
That's
are
correct.
able to take advantage of.
And I believe, if I'm correct, particularly in the physical therapy assistant, we've guaranteed you a slot.
Yes, you have, and it's been used. It's very
absolutely.
popular.
And so those were kind of traditional things that we've done. Commercial driver's license was a little different. And what we were very interested to do was to help Bladen capitalize on the economic base that they've got with all the food companies, food manufacturing companies that were there. And we knew that they needed a truck driver training program. And
So companies were asking you for truck drivers.
Begging me, absolutely. I mean, all manufacturing. We've got some wonderful oil companies in our area that are
Right.
transporting. I don't think there's a business in our area that did not need some truck driving.
And you've got the long established, well run, well operated, with a whole fleet of vehicles, expertise in truck driving.
that's
and
exactly
the truck
right.
driving pad.
Well, we do, and so currently we've got 6 trucks, but we're driving on a parking lot. But we were very fortunate, the General Assembly, based upon what else do you need, we indicated that we needed a larger truck driving pad because we've got a wait list all the way in almost through the spring of 2024 already. And because of space limitations, we could only get 3 trucks in operation. The 4th truck would go out on the road. Well, Dr. Lee's problem was the same thing, space utilization, limited. And so we required money, $10 million from the General Assembly to build a significant truck driver training facility with maybe the largest driving pad in the state on our west campus, a piece of property that we had given to us about 10 years ago that hadn't been utilized yet. And so my thought, and when the system office came out with a competitive grant, was, hey, wait a minute, let's partner with Bladen because they were putting some premium on regional partnerships. Let's partner with Bladen and let's see if we can't work it where we can utilize.
So wait. I thought you partnered with me because you liked me. You just partnered with me because there was some incentive to partner with me?
No, because we.
Go ahead.
I partnered with you because I like
Thank you. I'm glad we've got that
we
taken
have
care
that.
of. Yes, sir. So go right
Well,
ahead.
I like you too.
Okay.
But it was really to take advantage of that investment and open that investment up to Bladen Community College, where their limitation was like ours. They didn't have the space to do the backing, maneuvering, and things of that nature, and we're going to share that space.
And trucks are expensive.
I know, but y'all wait until you see my candy red apple truck.
Ah,
It's gorgeous. So trucks are expensive, but not only that, he had the expertise.
right.
We knew we needed the program,
Right.
and we knew we needed the physical space, but then we also knew that we needed some guidance. And so that was another resource that Fayetteville Tech very willingly and easily has made available to us.
So our department chair went down and worked with Dr. Lee's group to help set up the program, get the regulations and all addressed, the record keeping and everything ready to go, and actually worked with them to get the route from Bladen Community College to our truck driving pad authorized as that on-the-road route so that they could come up and then use the pad for the backing
And it
and
counts
maneuvering.
towards their training.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it counts toward their training.
It was brilliant. It was not my idea. It may have even been your idea. It
I
was
think it was
brilliant.
Eric's idea, actually.
Well, brilliant.
So we're lucky to have a lot of smart, talented people
Absolutely.
working with us to make these things happen. So let's talk a little bit. So that's the success story. Now, how's it working?
It's still in the progress of
Okay.
getting established. It took a little bit longer
Okay.
than we thought it would. So we got our truck, but
Okay.
then we had to get a trailer.
Okay.
And I am very, very thankful that because there was such a demand in our community, the trailer was actually donated to us by one of the industries that
Wonderful.
needs the drivers. So then we also had to work out the availability of the truck driving pad, and then we had to work through the grant. So there's been some of the hurdles as we've been going through that have made this maybe a little bit more challenging to get something done quickly.
So one of the lessons for colleges and boards to think about is persistence, because these things
yes.
don't happen
Absolutely.
overnight.
Absolutely.
You have to persist, you have to stay with
Yeah.
it, and you have to have the end goal in mind. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other opportunities we've created for students that folks may not think normally are possible. So let's talk about ours
Sure.
and how we work together. We had a conversation, if I recall, last December with a goal of being able to kick something off by February, so in a really short time frame.
Right.
But ours was not as complicated because we didn't have equipment involved. We didn't have the logistics involved, and we're not bringing equipment. He's not bringing equipment to our county and having to go through all the hoops. Instead, we're sharing academic and technical programs.
Correct.
So talk about how we had that conversation and how you worked with your folks and worked with ours to arrive at a win-win situation.
So I think we both kind of looked at, internally, what were some of the needs that we had from an employment base.
Right.
And so you identified paralegal, respiratory therapy, funeral service, speech language pathology, where you had employers in your area that needed talent, but maybe not at the scale that would support and sustain a program.
Right. I didn't need 10 graduates in each of those programs every year,
Absolutely.
but we needed a couple, and we needed that to be reliable and sustainable, and I needed other options for my students.
That's
We
correct.
already had a great mix of programs, but these were complementary.
Absolutely. And so we got our team together and we began to look at almost a 1+1 relationship where students from the home college could actually take as much of the credit, particularly the Gen Ed courses and others that might be available
And when
on
you
your
say
campus.
Gen Ed, you're talking about English, science,
English, science, math,
Right.
Soft skills.
sociology, psychology, communications.
So those are classes that we're already teaching,
Correct.
that my students are taking, that are already available, and I think we had to add a couple to satisfy your requirements. And then they're going to be on track to take your specialized courses so they can earn the degrees in those fields from your college.
That's correct. So they'd transfer once
Right.
they get to that point. They would transfer to Fayetteville Tech. Now, it did take, as you recall, Dale, some nudging of our faculty because our sequences didn't necessarily match
Right.
up. And we had to remind our folks that this was a partnership and we needed to flex and move in order to adjust and meet the needs of the student and the employer.
And Mandi, this is similar to the exact same recipe that y'all had already used on accounting and hospitality management.
Right. I think these are things that we have been doing for a long time, and we're modifying them, and we're updating them, and
Right.
we're streamlining the process. And I think another point that y'all just made that's important to think about as trustees is it's really encouraging us to be role models to the other institutions we're trying to have these agreements with. Whether it's
Absolutely.
our four-year institutions or even some of the apprenticeships and internships, that we have to be flexible. We have to be willing to nudge our faculty and make them appreciate the benefits of the relationships.
Now, one of the things that made our partnership a little different was it was a two-way street.
Right.
Because in addition to my students having access to programs that had been at Fayetteville Tech, your students now have access to our electric utility and substation program.
Absolutely. So we have a strong partnership with PwC. And we have a linesman program, we have electrical program, but we didn't have anything dealing with the electric substations and maintenance of those very critical facilities. You did. It didn't make sense for me to go out and start a very high-cost program for a utility that served Cumberland County and Cumberland
Right.
County only. So that partnership of being able to take our students and allow them to graduate from your program made a lot of sense.
And that sounds just like the conversation you and I had about 911 telecommunications and operations. Tell us about how that went.
And truly, it's the exact same concept. We knew that we've got some telecommunications operators that are retiring. We knew that there was a demand in our service area and some of the surrounding service areas. But just like Dale was mentioning for some of his previous programs, there was no way that I needed to run a program and have that number of graduates I would need to have a good, healthy program. So when Dale started it and then offered us an opportunity to join with him, it is adequately meeting the needs in our service area and doing it in a way that, again, is fiscally responsible and working together.
So what we have accomplished here is balancing local need with resource optimization.
Correct.
And making the best use and being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars while expanding opportunities for students.
But I think you've also identified very easily is this didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of conversations. I know for the truck driving alone, I have texted Mark and said, I think we need to talk. And he would immediately call me, and these are two very, very busy presidents, as am I. And there were times when we really had to drop everything to focus on these projects in order to make them work. And I think they're going to take ongoing communications. You know, hopefully our staff will be able to continue what we have started easily. But this doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in the blink of an eye.
I think you're right, and I think the thing that we've got to be attuned to is that intentional interaction between our faculty and our department chairs, program coordinators, to continue that dialogue going forward.
Well, let's build on that just a second. We don't want to leave anybody out, so if you're watching this from another college and you're thinking, well, I think our college partners with these folks, we don't want to leave you out, and we want to make sure we recognize the other partnerships with colleges.
Sure.
Because this has gone beyond just the three of us. So talk a little bit about the other colleges and the other partnerships you've got here at Fayetteville Tech.
So we've had some ISAs, I think in the physical therapy assistant. We've had an ISA with James Sprunk Community College for a number of years where we also allocate a slot. But the President Singler and I had some conversation. She really needed dental assisting and dental hygiene at Robinson Community College. And she was interested in looking at maybe standing up a program, but was not confident because of the cost that she could support it, particularly in the beginning. And so I said, well, hey, look, we just got additional slots in both of our programs, and I know in our dental assisting, we're not filling all those slots. What if I allocated 6 slots for your students in that program, and in dental hygiene 4 slots? And if you grow over time and then you can afford to start your own program, hey, that's great. It's a win-win for both communities in terms of moving forward. So we've done that program with them. We're also in conversation with the Associate in Arts program, which she would like to have at her college, but they don't have enough support and demand for that. We're also talking about the CDL partnership, where her students can drive up and use our pad for those maneuvering situations as well. The big one that we started a few years ago that Dale, you're part of as well, is the Carolina Cyber Network. Cybersecurity is becoming ever-present threat of criminal activity.
Right.
Over 23,000 jobs are needed to be filled in the state of North Carolina, almost 750,000 across the United States. And so a few years ago, we looked at a model of taking hub and spoke, hubs being colleges that have the accredited distinction of being a center of academic excellence in cybersecurity, and helping build capacity, not just in our larger communities, but in the small rural communities of our state, because those cybersecurity threats are ever present there as well.
So you're using technology to make this beyond this region and taking it statewide.
That's absolutely correct. And
So they aren't limited, these partnerships aren't limited just to a geographic region. You can go all across the state if you have the right recipe and the right format.
and the willingness to work together and the right players at the table.
Right.
And so now we're at 18 2- and 4-year colleges across the state working toward that skills gap. We're very fortunate that we've gotten resources from the General Assembly, the state, 2 years, and now we're in the budget this time through the Division of Information Technology, where we've got 2 more years worth of funding, and we're using that money to help build capacity at the local colleges. So at your college,
It's making a difference.
Absolutely. We knew that the utility with the attack in Moore County, we needed to be more secure around those substations.
So now we've got a niche in that area tying cybersecurity into the smart grid and the whole utility system. So we've taken the same approach with our first partner, Bladen. You were the very first school we partnered with.
Thank you.
On our 911, brand new 911 telecommunications associate degree, but now we have, I think, 8 total other colleges that have taken your example and build on it, and they're from across the state as well.
Right.
So from Carteret all the way, I think, to Asheville now, we'll have partnerships where those students are taking those same general ed courses you mentioned at their college. They've got 5 classes to take with us. They can take them online and then do the work-based learning at their own 911 center. So we built on the lessons we learned with your partnership and been able to replicate it in some other places. Let's talk.
And I think too, if I can pause
Yes,
just for 1
please.
second, we're just given the examples we're aware of.
Right.
I would imagine there's not a college in our system of the 58 of us that does not have at least one partnership within the system.
Let's talk about why. What makes those partnerships advantageous? What
I
gives
think-
you a strength on that?
I think we have to have them. None of us have all of the resources that we need to meet our students' needs and our community's demands. And it's smart. You know, we're all very, very smart at what we do, and we realize we cannot do it alone. We started this conversation talking about our strengths and our talents, and these partnerships allow us to really utilize those in the best way possible. I think historically we had truck driving that was in the western part of the state, and it came to the eastern part of the state in partnerships. I think there's several consortiums in the western part of the state that work very closely together. So Julie was kind enough to ask us to do this session,
Right.
but she could have really asked anybody, I think, in the system.
How does this reduce risk for a college? So we're always thinking about our choices and options. So let's talk about ways these partnerships can not only strengthen, but when you're looking at your program mix, how can it reduce and prevent risk?
Well, Dr. McInnis, I think one of the biggest areas for me is we don't have a dedicated source of money for startup programs. And so you've really got to take it out of your hide internally to start these programs, or be fortunate enough that there's a grant program that you can reach out to. Well, even if it's a grant program, that's not free money. There are strings attached to it. If you don't perform, you've caused a problem for yourself going forward. So being able to minimize the program startup cost in terms of the sunk cost that you've got to put into getting it up and getting it running really helps mitigate a lot of that risk going forward.
How have these new programs, Mandi, added attention and energized your campus?
We are very, very excited. I mean, to have that truck on our campus is amazing. To be able to have another opportunity to partner with our sheriff's department is incredibly satisfying to all of us. And I would just second what you have both said. There is no way I could have started a truck driving program. It stretched us to get the one truck that we had and that we have that is still not on the road yet because the trailer that was donated to us, the title has disappeared. So we're looking, the company who gave it to us is looking right now as we speak for that title. But to talk about the strings with the grants, after we got the grant with Fayetteville Tech, we realized that we didn't really have the allocations the way we needed it.
Right.
And in order for this to work, we needed a simulator. That was part of what we were trying to accomplish. So again, going back to having these conversations was so important. So we have the simulator. We got it this week. I don't even think I told you yet. I'm so excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We haven't plugged it in yet. We're scared to plug it in. Absolutely. Absolutely. You just wait. That's going to make my second career. But if something were to go wrong with this program, I can more easily share that piece of equipment with you all than I could have tried to figure out what to do with, you said you have 6 trucks. I cannot imagine ever having the resources to have 6 trucks. But the overhead for those trucks, even the overhead for a simulator, hiring all the faculty and the staff support that you need to run these programs that can be, in this case, very high cost program. You're exactly right. To be able to partner has helped make our investment something that we can afford, and also has given us a cushion to get our feet on the ground, or if it doesn't work, to minimize our risk.
I think the other thing it does too, Dr. Lee, is it helps create opportunity for our students, but it also helps minimize the cost of being able to access those programs that might not be available in their home community. By allowing them to take as much of the coursework as they possibly can at their home college, but also in many of those areas, we've either lined up the courses where it causes minimal travel to come versus having to travel 4 or 5 days a week, and offered online where we could, and then where there's clinical placements, you've got clinical sites in both of your communities where those students can do those clinical arrangements.
So that's a great segue to barriers, because we often hear reasons why we can't do stuff. We've been able to overcome some of these issues, but let's talk about some of the barriers that we had to face and overcome, and some issues other colleges are going to have to come up with creative solutions to figure out how to form their own partnerships. So number one, incentives. Right now there's no incentive. We split the same FTE, or we simply keep our FTE, full-time equivalent funding. So for the program we're doing on 911, you keep all your FTE. For your students taking the general ed courses, I get the FTE when they sign up for online courses. But there's no incentive beyond that for us to partner. For your truck driver program, y'all are actually splitting FTE, correct?
Well, we're not splitting FTE. The arrangement we made was for both Bladen and Robinson to be able to keep all their FTE, and then they just pay a fee to the college, kind of as a maintenance fee to
See,
where
that's
we
another
can keep
creative
up the
solution,
facility.
But we're all still having to fight over a single FTE.
That's correct.
And figure out how to make those limited dollars, how to leverage them.
Well, and it's hard in a program like truck driver training, respiratory therapy, because in many of those programs we're upside down.
Right.
So the cost that it requires us to deliver that program is more than the cost of the FTE generated from the program. And I think that's a nice little segue to think about. It's a barrier, but the way we've been able to construct it, the small college, medium college, the gen ed classes is where we do make money.
Right.
And allowing you all to make money off of those courses, and the way we can get better is having more capacity, more seats available in that to absorb that instructional cost going forward. So it's a win-win situation, although we end up taking more of the higher cost end of the spectrum,
Right.
but it is a win situation for both parties.
Now, you talked about some of the earlier conversation. You talked about some of the challenges that we overcame, convincing faculty and staff this was a good thing, getting schedules and courses aligned. That took some effort.
It did, and unfortunately, at times it takes some direct conversations that we need to do this, and this is why we need to do it, and we're going to do it. And so at times, as presidents, we've got to have those very difficult conversations with folks because it makes sense for our students and for our employers.
Wouldn't it be helpful if there were a template? Because right now there's no template to developing a partnership. There's no guide. Everybody has to reinvent the wheel every time. You want to speak to how your experience with two different colleges worked.
And I was working with two brilliant people, so that made it so much easier.
You're too kind.
And I would say that our ISA approach is an old approach, and it is a clunky approach. And I think that's why we've been trying to work a little bit outside of the box in order to come up with something that truly worked for our relationships and our colleges.
Right.
But I do think we need the flexibility to be able to do whatever will work and whatever is in the best interest of everybody that's involved. I think another barrier too is it's very hard to think creatively. You know, it's much easier to say this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we need to keep doing it. And that involves some trust, not just amongst us, but trust with the system office, trust with our board of trustees, that we are working towards the best interest of our community. And then I also think another barrier, and this is one that we're struggling with a little bit, is these new programs really need a champion on our campus. And I think that we all know the students who are successful are the students who make a connection on campus. They connect with an advisor or a counselor or a faculty member or the person who's recruiting them. These programs, because they're housed off of our campus, sometimes they get lost. So sometimes we don't realize that there's actually a 911 program out there. So trying to keep these options up on the front center of everybody's mind is a challenge as well.
And I think, if I might,
Yeah,
Dale,
please.
and I think that kind of bleeds into the marketing piece.
Okay.
And being able to think more collectively about how we market within our region rather than we're marketing individually for our college and our program, that we're really reaching that broader base of employers that is represented in the Sand Hills region.
Did you have to have conversations with your faculty and staff about the quality of the other colleges that you're working with and giving them the assurance that we're not going to miss a beat? They're going to offer what we need. Their students are going to be prepared to take these classes.
We did not. You both have such great reputations. That was not a challenge at all for us.
We didn't either because we had a
Are
lot of
you saying
confidence.
that you did about us?
No. I think it's important for folks that are listening to this to understand that that's not something we ran into.
Not at all.
We did not, and I will tell you, my faculty never, not one time, did they bring up the issue of, well, but their programs, we knew, and I think we've had between our nursing programs and whatever, we've had students shift around. We know the quality's there,
Right.
and the quality among the 58 community colleges is on par all across the board, in my opinion. And I've been on every community college in this state and worked very deeply with the majority of those community colleges.
Well, you have a record I can't touch because there's still a few I haven't been to yet.
I was just thinking the same thing.
I've
I'm
got
a
a few
little
I've still got to
embarrassed.
check off, so you win the prize on that one, Mark. So, moving forward, how do we make this better? What are some opportunities that we've talked about this because we see this as a platform for all of our colleges in our system office to revisit how we build partnerships and how we satisfy this expectation our General Assembly has that we're not going to replicate things 10 times unnecessarily.
Right.
So what are some opportunities that y'all helped us identify that maybe we can get enacted at the local and state level?
Well, I definitely think we need our trustees to continue to be advocates. We need you to talk about how well these partnerships are working. We need you to talk about how much you believe in what we're doing, and talk to our elected officials as well. We've mentioned several times about some things that cost money. Marketing costs money. The resources, even though they're minimal, they do still cost extra. Starting a program is expensive. And so anything that we can have that would allow us the resources to do some of these creative things and the flexibility, it would be extremely helpful. And I don't know about you all, but I also need time. I need time to get a pilot going. I need time where we can play with trying to figure out what is going to work right before we're measured in a way that might be negative, if that makes sense.
And so I'd talk about that in terms of having some patient capital in terms of these new programs. The other thing, it came to light yesterday, we had the governor on campus. I had a number of my board members on campus that went with us through the tour. Mm-hmm. And I had board members say, I had no idea the extent, the depth of the work that you're doing on the campus. I think we've got to take the opportunity sometimes with our board of trustees meetings to get them out of the boardroom, get them into these programs where we can demonstrate the traction that we're getting, the excitement we're getting mm-hmm. among the students, and celebrate that going forward so we can promote and incentivize more of that regionalism and that we're better together mindset.
So we've had opportunities and funding for startup programs. Do we need to see some connection with that startup money with a preference for partnerships where it gives some incentive for folks to consider reaching out to other colleges rather than starting up something and duplicating it on a smaller scale? How can we build on existing strengths?
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've got to do it, and right now we're starting to have some conversations. We've got a regional hospital, and it bumps up against two other service areas for other community colleges, and we know that clinical placements are a problem. And so sometimes right. in one of our programs, we might be up one year and be good, but then be down the next year, and we're sitting there fighting over clinical sites. And I think we can do a better job in working together and finding those collaborative ways to work through and create those high need, high demand programs to be able to service our economy.
Mandi, you and I are working on a modernization effort on our funding model.
Yes.
How do you see that we can take advantage and update the funding for partnerships and magnify that?
Absolutely, and to say that we are working on it with me and Dale is really an understatement, because it's a collaboration among so many of the presidents, system office staff, and others that we're bringing in as their expertise allows us to. And I do think there's an opportunity here to look at the way that we are funded, the way that our tiers are set up, the way that we can incentivize these partnerships that would make them an encouragement and something that we would all want to do and something that would be profitable
right.
for all of us.
Well, we want to make it the best possible use of the state's resources and provide the best possible services for our communities. One of the items that's come out since we did this original presentation, which was nothing nearly as effective as this without your being there.
Oh, thanks.
But the hurricane was a hurricane, and that kept a lot of people from seeing this. We've also found out through our conversations with the system office, we got to do a better job of tracking these partnerships, of monitoring them.
Absolutely.
Of capturing what's working and what's not, to figure out how can we follow the best practices and learn from other people's mistakes.
Well, and I think it's important too that these are not just partnerships on paper.
That's a great point.
That we truly can show that it's an investment and it's working.
So how do we, that's a perfect segue to talk about building these better partnerships for the future. So what's a hint you would give another college on how to keep it from being paper only? How do you keep that partnership alive and strong and vibrant?
Well, for our college, it's the communication with the sister college. So making sure that we do have these conversations and that they're ongoing. I think it also is important to bring in our local advisory groups to make sure that the credentials that we're working on are indeed meeting the needs. You know, sometimes things change and we need to be willing to change as well. And I think that's really important that we are, again, we talked earlier about modeling the behavior that we want with our university partners and some of our other partners. But I think this also gives us an example as a community college to show that we are nimble and to show that we can very quickly respond to whatever needs come up. And Mark, that's what y'all have done with the cybersecurity. And it's not the same program, I bet, that you imagined it would be when you started.
Oh, no.
You've been constantly evolving and constantly
Absolutely.
working on it. And I think that's part of one of the things that we need to be willing to do is we may start the conversation with a
Right.
goal in mind, but be willing to take it where it ends up going.
Because it's being monitored and managed and supported and nurtured. Mark, talk about the co-branding and how you shared the created new programs from these partnerships with both the colleges and the other colleges in the cybersecurity, how you actually formed its own identity and communicated that to students.
Well, and I think what we always try to get at is what's the why behind it.
Okay?
And if you can look at and define the why, and where I started was, it's about our students, it's about our employers. Our institutions exist for those two things. Our mission is workforce development. Everything, every day, all day long, ought to be about workforce and meeting that economic development mission. And if we can stay on that and have our faculty having those conversations across institutions and talking about how together we can better serve, and Dr. Lee, in my case, we've got Smithfield sitting down here and they're about 3 miles inside the Bladen County line. And so we've got an employment base, labor shed, that's coming from Cumberland County, Robeson County, Bladen County, and it takes us all to be able to meet that need.
Well, DuPont's the same way.
Absolutely.
Right there. So
Absolutely.
and they don't care about county lines
No.
and service areas. They simply want the workforce that they need. At our college, one of the things we say is the status quo is our enemy. And that's really part of what you're hearing today is that the status quo has to change because the world around us is changing. And the idea is that we can be self-contained and isolated. That's in the past, Dr. Lee.
Absolutely.
And I think the fact that we are sitting here today, we're looking to see the results. I don't think the payoff's quite there yet because we've just started. But all signs are these are going to be successful and that we can make this work. And the learning process that we've enjoyed just from initiating this has been beneficial. What have we learned that you're going to do next time that we didn't do this past time?
Well, I go back and when you were mentioning that, Dr. McInnis, the first thing I thought about was, particularly with the cybersecurity effort that we're dealing with, I think one of the things that really helped us get out of the gate quick and have success was we engaged in the conversation up front. What are the key performance indicators that matter?
KPIs.
KPIs, and we defined those, we've stuck to them, and it's really helped us move forward. I was just at the National Cybersecurity Conference last week, and North Carolina is being looked at now as a national demonstration site. Probably one of the most advanced, if not the most advanced state in the nation in terms of developing a cybersecurity ecosystem to help public and private employers engage and protect their proprietary information.
What's the advice you'd give, Dr. Lee, to small colleges?
So that's a great question, and I wish you had taken a little bit longer in your answer so I could have pondered this and say something truly eloquent. I think that sometimes when we're looking at partnerships, it's very easy to focus on the larger schools and the resources the larger schools have. So I think my advice would be that we really get creative in our conversations and that we talk. I don't necessarily know the things that James Brunt is thinking about doing, or Sampson Community College, or where their gaps are, and they probably don't know mine. So I think one of the conversations that we need to start doing better as presidents and as colleges is really just talking about where there's some opportunities. I don't know if we necessarily do that well.
And this is not about merger or consolidation. This is a way to avoid merger and consolidation, not a path for it. So sometimes people hear partnerships with big schools, their first indication or inclination is, oh, they're going to take us over.
It's a slippery slope.
But have you seen any sign of that, or do you have any reservations about that?
Well, I've threatened Mark with his life.
Literally.
But no, absolutely not. And I do think as we continue to talk about modernizing the ISAs and the process, we can put some things in place that would give people the confidence that that's not a hidden agenda.
Well, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
The other thing that just came to mind when Mandi was talking about it, I remembered when we were setting up our meetings, and some of the conversation, and I think some of the stickiness to that partnership is going to come from the fact that my executive assistant and Mandi's executive assistant have developed a working relationship now.
That's a good point.
And they can help drive more of that ongoing conversation and more of that deliberate intent.
So
about
even
how
more
we
than
work
just your
together.
chief academic officers and your faculty, all the way down to your support staff.
Absolutely.
One of the things, speaking of support staff, one of the things that you hear a lot about are shared services. Now, everything that we're talking about today has been academic. Now, all of our partnerships are instructional. We've not discussed, and this is not part of this conversation, any back office, financial, HR, IT partnerships. Some colleges may be having those conversations, and they may work in some places. But that's really something we've not had any appetite or interest in focusing on, because we want to focus, I think I'm saying this correctly, exclusively on the classroom.
Well, I think you're right, Dale. I think we've done that because, again, students and employers.
Well, this goes back to the why.
It goes back to the why,
The
absolutely.
why and my future in C, right? I mean, that's I think a goal that we all share.
Absolutely. I think the other thing too is when you start getting into that shared services, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more planning, a lot more thought process into working toward a solution in that particular area.
Well, as we wrap this up, final thoughts that you want to share with our audience and leave them to consider as they think about partnerships at their colleges.
Well, I do want to say thank you that this is a wonderful privilege for me to have an opportunity to join the two of you, since I did miss the inaugural version of this session, which I am sure was very, very well done.
This is much better, much better.
You added a lot to it.
I don't
much
believe that
better.
at all, but thank you. You make me feel good. And I don't think that we can move forward and be successful as a system without partnering better. So I'm excited about these opportunities, and I think for Bladen Community College, this has the potential to really transform the opportunities that my citizens and residents have, because as we've said, the jobs are not going to stay in my county, even though I hope the people continue to live in my county.
Dr. Sorrells.
We're better together.
We're
Simple.
better together. Well, I want to thank Julie Woodson and the Trustees Association and the Board of Directors for having the great idea of inviting us back to do this. And we want to share this with all the colleges and all the trustees. If you have questions, if you want to follow back up, we're all welcoming your contact. Reach out to us. We're glad to help. And we'll look forward to update you in the future on how these programs succeed. We're already getting great enrollment in many of the partnerships we've kicked off with you, and I think we're seeing students from your area sign up with us. So it's been a great experience coming back here. Thank you for having us here, Dr. Sorrells.
Thank you both for coming.
And we look forward to reporting back on the great success our students have in these partnerships. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.